You are watching Influence Media, PSI TV, the Netflix of biz brands.
My guest today is Johnny Elssasser, a former U.S. Army Ranger out of 2nd Ranger Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. He was deployed 4 times between Iraq and Afghanistan, spanning the positions of private, saw gunner, team leader, and squad leader throughout his service. He also spent 5 years working for a private contractor protecting the U.S. ambassador to Iraq as the tactical commander, spanning 3 different U.S. ambassadors. Wow. Once he was no longer fighting for his flag, his life fell apart and he took ownership of his role in the failure of his life and his marriage. And he went to find new purpose for his life outside of the military. But he realized that he was not alone in his struggle. And using the camaraderie style of the military, he formed the Wildman Experience, the elite community, and his signature Art of Masculinity podcast. Johnny, thank you for being my guest today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Trudy. I'm really excited to have our conversation and see where we go with it for your community.
Absolutely. Well, I was looking through your stuff because I researched my guest, Johnny, and on your Instagram page, you had a saying. This was your saying. You weren't quoting anybody else. The world deserves a better caliber of man, and it's our responsibility to give it to them. What do you mean by a better caliber of man?
This is a great question. I love that you had this for me because I love that saying. And actually where I derived it from, I'll back up 1 second, is if anybody listening or you have ever seen the Batman with Christopher Nolan's Batman, it's The Dark Knight. And yet it's got Heath Ledger as the Joker. And Heath Ledger gets all the money from the mob bosses and then he burns it in front of the mob boss. And he goes, the world deserves a better, what does he say? The world deserves a better villain or a better caliber of villain, right? And so I took that and I was like, I love that line because the fact that like what he was saying was he wanted a villain who was like purely there for not money and not all of these material things, but to create, because he was an agent of chaos, to create chaos, right? And so for me, the message was like really powerful that he had in that moment. But what really was powerful was the design of that particular line. And I was like, the world does deserve a better caliber of man. And how does that apply to my business was like, men are falling short of what it takes to be elite in this world because they fail to work on themselves. They fail to look at who they are internally. They fail to address their struggles. They mask that, they shove it down, and they don't acknowledge a lot of the things that are causing them issues. And then on top of that, they believe they're alone. And then on top of all of that, they actually don't show up very well for anybody in their lives, to include themselves. And so the world deserves a better caliber of man. It deserves a man who's going to look at his shadows, who's going to grow through his shadows, and who's going to then impact the world, his ecosystem, those who love him and look up to him in a positive way so they can see the strength in somebody who knows himself, but then also knows how he interacts with the world. The world deserves that because right now we're not showing up. There's so many men out there that are struggling alone and in their own vices and causing a lot of their own negative impacts on other people's lives because they're not doing the work on themselves, that they're not showing up as good men. They're not showing up as positive influences, and they're not showing up as a version of masculinity that's going to push this world forward, that's going to grow the next generation to be even better than us. We're not doing that now. And so the world deserves that better caliber of man. Even though it may not know what it looks like, it deserves it. And we're charged with finding him and then giving him to the rest of the world.
Do you think the men know that? Do you think they know they're not showing up as okay, let me put it this way. A lot of people, if you suggest to them that they're not showing up as their best self, a lot of them will get defensive. So it's like, whether it's they don't want to admit it, they're not aware. Do you think they're aware?
100%. That's the problem. Is that they are actually aware. Majority of them know. Like, let me ask you this. Most people that you know, do they look up to somebody? Do they value a celebrity or value somebody on TV or a billionaire? They do. And it's because they don't have that value in themselves. And they know that there's something different out there, but then they don't have the belief that they can get there because the world has told them that they aren't part of that, that they're not capable of doing that. And then they believe the world. They say, my lot in life is to be an average, everyday person that makes the world a cog in the wheel. I'm not destined to be those people, but you can be. And it's because of the fact that they don't address their internal issues. They're not saying that, oh yeah, like my struggle is actually the limitations I place on myself, but they know it's there, which is why they look up to somebody else. And so right now, most men out there, I guarantee you, and women know that there's more in life for them, but they have gotten so comfortable in mediocrity and being average that it's like, well, it's so crazy to try to do something different. It's so crazy to try to step out and do something that has risk and reward, because this is very comfortable for me. I mean, think about why the government was even developed, why our society has even evolved the way it is. It was specifically designed to create cogs in the wheel so that you don't go and seek anything better, to make safety so comfortable that you're like, well, this is good enough. I'm not like struggling in life, but I'm getting by, and that's good enough, right? It's proposed this version of mediocrity we've decided to accept, and everybody knows about it. They know they have this in them. They're terrified of trying to see what is a better version, because it takes risk, it takes reframing, it takes questioning, it takes actually having real conversations. And to all those people that are defensive, they're defensive because they're protecting their insecurities. Their insecurity is saying, hey, dude, he's asking real questions we don't want to know answers to, because the answers are going to lead us to know that what we're doing right now is not as good as what we can be. So we need to be defensive. We need to lash out. And that's what they do. And so everybody that's defensive, by that defensiveness, is admitting that they know the problem.
Well, you are very expressive, which a lot of men they're not. So that's interesting right there. So Johnny, you are ex-military. You just talked about safety, and it's interesting you talk about safety because that's what the military is really all about. So you're ex-military. You went through some physical and emotional challenges, especially after leaving the military, and you had a divorce in your life. Now, the data suggests that this is pretty common for vets, retired military, but I think it's a problem with men in general. So without necessarily specifically going to the vet side of it, how does the whole Wildman experience solve or address this issue?
Well, the Wildman experience was born out of a combination of things. It was born out of my development in myself over the years, when I decided that things were at a point where I was not happy. And it stems from also my background of loving to be a guy, loving to be a bro, loving to be a dude. I love that life. I love a lot of aspects of that. And there's a lot of bonding that comes through that brotherhood. But then it lacks a lot in the fact that majority of how that's been handed to us by the previous generation has not been to have real conversations, to not talk about sex or money or struggling or any of that. We don't talk about that stuff. And so it wasn't handed to us with a full holistic picture. And this is why the Wildman experience for me addresses this for every man, because of the fact I do love to hang out and shoot guns and throw darts and have a drink and play pool and be a bro around a fire. But I also love to have real conversations. Dude, what is going on in your life right now? Do you feel like you're showing up to be the best version of yourself? Do you feel like you're serving your family, your friends? Do you feel like you're serving yourself? When's the last time you experienced joy, pure joy of something for you? When's the last time you did that for yourself? And you find out that these questions lead to a lot of really deep, really healing conversations, just to share them with another man, with a brother. And so it gives men the combination of the two things I think we need, which ends up in the one thing, which is incredibly important, which is brotherhood. But it gives them two things I think they need, which is bro hangout time so they can relax and feel free to be a man. And two, that depth of conversation that expands their awakening of their own shadows, their own joy, their own experience in life. So it's a combination of those. And real quick, if I take us back to the inception, I guess it wouldn't be the inception, but as we look at things as the development of men, when we look at the original men's movement back from the 70s and 80s, it failed because of the fact that it didn't do this. It didn't do what the Wildman Experience does. And so what happened was they created this whole spiritual environment where the 97% of men who are the backbone of society, doing hard jobs every single day, making us, allowing us to have the world go around, those guys were not being connected with by that men's movement, and therefore they were being left behind, and they weren't given the tools to do the work on themselves. And we cannot fail in that this time, because society is evolving very fast. And so that's why I created the Wildman, because I don't want those men being left behind. I want them to come do fun stuff. I do one in Alaska where we do all this fishing and hiking, and we fly in boat planes and go see Kodiak bears, like all this stuff. And I do that because we also have real conversations at the top of a mountain. We'll do a meditation. We'll do a release of something that's plaguing us in our lives, like all this stuff. But it's all holistic in the event of having bro time and having an in-depth experience of conversation and internal reflection.
Wow. I feel like that's like what us girls do, because most men grunt at each other. I mean, my husband and his brother, if I ask my husband right now what's his brother's favorite color, I can guarantee you he doesn't know it. If I ask my son what's his best friend's favorite meal, I can guarantee you he does not know it. What you guys talk about all day long, I'm like, what? Because it's like they just grunt. How you doing? That's what I see men do. And you're sounding like they actually do have conversations. I'm like, I'd like to be that wall.
They really do. But the thing is they need an environment to do so. Men don't feel safe enough in the everyday environment because they also lack the confidence in themselves to say that, hey man, even if I share I'm struggling, I don't feel like any less of a man, and I don't look like any less of a man. But that comes through confidence with the internal process of moving through your shadows and knowing who you are to your core. And so men are having these conversations when you give them the right environment, when they feel safe enough that they're not going to be judged, that they're not expected to be something else, and that you are actually opening the door to it too. I open up about my life with these guys. I'm not sitting there just acting like I'm some holy leader on it. I'm like, no, bro, this is what's going on right now. Oh man, sales in my business haven't been great. I've had that conversation in front of these guys who purchased tickets to come, because it's all about authenticity and honesty. And if I'm not willing to do that, I can't ask them to do the same things. So when we give them permission to do that by showing it and being leaders in that conversation, and we give them an environment of safety, men will have that conversation 100% of the time. But not enough men, not enough strong leaders in the world today are giving them that.
So you wrote a book, Design the Man Within. Before I ask you who would benefit the most from it, is that kind of like if somebody read your book, would they walk away with some DIY type tips, or is it just like what if a reader grabbed that book, what could they look forward to?
So it does. When I started my development process, first off, like I'll give a full transparency. I was the first person to get handed a development book by at the time, she was my good friend and now she's my wife. She handed me a book, a self-development book. And I was the first guy to throw the book to the side and be like, yeah, right. I'm not going to have somebody else tell me how to be a good man. Right. First thing I did. Well, months went by, things didn't change. And if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so I was still having my own struggles. I was still not being the version of myself I wanted to be. And I was like, let me just read this book. So I picked it up, and it was a beautifully written book that punched me right in the stomach because of how Dr. Wayne Dyer writes. And I was like, oh man, this is amazing. And it was Excuses Be Gone. It was basically telling me, hey, everything you're saying is blocking you from doing something is you protecting an insecurity. This is you making up an excuse. And you need to come to the realization that until you actually fight through that excuse and figure out what's behind it, you're never going to grow into the man that you want to be. So when I started to process that, I started to be like, okay, this is where the journey begins. And so at the time, I also got handed a men's development book, which was very spiritual, is very esoteric. It reminds me of the guys when they did the original movement back in the 70s and 80s that left every other man behind, like 97%. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I have no reference point for this. This makes no sense to me. I can't even know how you get from where I'm at to where this guy is. So I made a book that was like, hey, not only do I know what you guys are going through, it's a book that I needed when I started my journey. And on top of that, because I am former special operations, I am, somebody who is great at applying tools when they're given to me. Just give me the tools and I will work them out. And I want people to always have that. So not just in my podcast, but in my book, I give tools. This is work, guys. And I actually challenge them to do it. Like, hey, put down your own insecurities, put down your own preconceived notions, and I strictly made the work about 10 to 15 minutes worth of work after every chapter. And I said, just take the 10 to 15 minutes, do yourself a favor and do the work. By the end of this, you'll either have built something that looks very different that you're very proud of and has already making changes in your life, or at the end of it, you'll have gained some knowledge and you may have improved your life a little bit, but at least you gave it a chance to change. Right? To change something. And so I challenge guys to do that because I don't want them to not have the tools, because at the end of the day, the whole point of all of this is you're never going to conquer this. This is the misconception. You're not going to conquer this stuff. It's hard to think that you're going to do that when you're operating against a subconscious that is a million times more powerful than your prefrontal cortex. It's not going to happen. But what you can do is give yourself tools. So when the shadows come back up, when the negativity resurfaces, when the judgment and criticism comes in, you can get through it a lot faster and you don't sit in it and you don't let it take your life down. That's why I give them the tools so they can expect to have work and tools in there. And what they can expect to get is to get somebody who has been through a lot of the perceptions, the limitations and the judgments that they have had and has physically used these tools. I didn't make these up. I didn't go pull them off somebody else's website. I physically used every tool in this book to help me grow in my own journey. And it's not always been easy, but I wanted to at least give guys that ability to work with them themselves. So they know that they're getting a guy who knows where they're coming from, who's experienced that, and who's worked through it as well and still working through it.
Design the man within. Okay, so so Johnny, you have a very Jason Momoa vibe going on. I mean, it's not really obvious right now, but if anybody goes and checks out your Instagram page, there we go, and then the man bun and all, and then you're very ripped and everything. You definitely, you definitely have that kind of vibe. But you're clearly into fitness as well. I think that it sounds like the Wildman Experience may have some of that because you talked about climbing mountains and all of that. Now you've moved back into civilian life. Now, how did this whole fitness thing fit into your lifestyle overhaul? The whole component of helping men. How does this work? Because you're not really a fitness coach. You're not a fitness coach. You are more of a lifestyle coach.
Yeah. And fitness for me is a way of life. I tell people this, for me, it's not a have to do, it's a get to do. I love fitness because it's my safe sanctity, like meditative place, because I just get to be me for an hour and really just be with my own thoughts and be with the weights. And I feel great. And the thing with fitness, it's like, it's not like, especially because I get this excuse all the time that men sacrifice their lives to give everything to their families, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. If that's what you want to buy. But if you are fat and lazy and you're not working out, guess what you're giving to your family that you say you love so much? You're giving them a dead father, right? You're killing yourself right in front of them. And so like, if you really want to optimize and give your life for your kids, how about you start living your life for your kids, start living your life for your wife, go to the gym, work out, let them know that you care about your body. Cause I'll tell you this right now, when I see people, what they physically look like, I can tell you what their internal perception is of themselves. It is a direct reflection of how they feel. And that to me is the saddest part, because you can make up all the lies to my face that you want, but your actions speak louder than words. And fitness for me is showing the world, you don't have to look like me. You don't have to go be a bodybuilder or anything like that. But if you are in shape and you feel in shape and you work out and put the time in, you are showing the world that you care about who you are internally. You care about what's going on inside of your body and who you are to your foundation. You care about that. And if you care about that, that means I know you care about the people around you. And I know you care about the social environments that you're in. And so for me, fitness has always been something in my life because first off, when I started fitness, when I was 16 years old, I was like, I wanted to get the girls. I grew up like watching Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I was like, all right, the fit guys get the girls. I was the skinny, tall kid and I couldn't get the girls. So I was like, all right, I got to work out. But it became a lifestyle for me. And no matter where I was in my life, no matter how hard things got, no matter even during when I came back from the military and I was struggling, fitness was always my North Star because it allowed me to still have this level of confidence in myself that I could still persevere when I put myself in like hard times or in tough environments, right? So it gave me that guiding light to say, listen, bro, you're still confident in yourself. There's some stuff you got to work on, but look at what you're still doing. You show up every day and you do this and you feel good. That's the other part is the amount of endorphins that are released and the chemical chain reactions that happen in your body from fitness you don't get from any other experience in your life. Not only that, but the benefits to your brain that you get from fitness is insane. So if you're not doing fitness, you're just literally not taking care of yourself. You're not putting yourself in a position to be happy because you're releasing serotonin when that happens as well. Like you're having all of this internal conversation that boosts your energy levels. It boosts your happiness. It boosts your confidence. And you're leaving all of that to the wayside without fitness. So if you haven't made fitness a priority in your life, you're only going to go so far, even doing this mindset work or self-development work. You'll only go so far until you start to implement fitness. I promise you, because that is a huge component. It is mind, body, and spirit for a reason. And people preach that for a reason. I am not the first one to say it. And there's been many people before me that have said it. And the reason why it's that is because that body is a huge component, just as important to the mind and the spirit. Because the fact that it gives us the level to find a different piece of confidence, a different modality to connect with who we are, and gives us an added tool to help grow out of the shadows as well.
Are you that straightforward with your clients when you have them?
100%. They know this. And I don't play that game because I want them. It's just, for me, it's like, I can't be anything other than myself. And I need to be direct with them because the fact that a lot of people haven't been direct with them their whole lives, which is why they're in the place they're in. But when you get direct with people and they realize like you're not messing around, that you really want what's best for them, because I'm not going to call you. If I didn't care about you, I would give you lip service and be like, oh, you look great. Yeah, man, it's cool that you got Cheetos and Doritos in your cabinet. Like, that's great, man. That's dope. I love that. Like, no, I don't love that. Stop being a fat, lazy person. Start looking at your diet. Start looking at your fitness, because from there you can start to build. Like doing that is an excuse.
Skinny like you used to be, so it still is.
Right.
Fitness is still a value, even if they're not fat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like, listen, if you're like skinny and you can't lift a freaking 20-pound weight, like you need to start putting in the time to actually eat the right things in your diet, put some more protein in there, actually start to increase the things that are going to give you some muscle mass and start to feel strong in who you are and how you present yourself. And that will also grow from the fitness. So regardless of what end of the spectrum you're on, there's room for improvement on either side. And that is what we go after. And that's what I have no problem being direct with people. It's like too many people they want to be people pleasers, and I want to be people changers. I want people to find that best version of themselves. And I truly do, because everybody in their lives that look up to them deserve to have that from them, and they deserve to have that for themselves. And so I will always be honest about it.
So what's the deal with the pig on your page? Is that your mascot or your next meal?
That's my little baby Lucy. My wife and I, she's so cute. My wife grew up with like a potbelly pig. And when we were in the DC area, she was like, hey babe, when we buy a house, we're going to get a pig. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Whatever. Literally. So we buy a house in Charleston, South Carolina. And within the first 2 months of us being there, my wife had located a breeder up in Michigan. We drove our RV all the way up to Michigan, picked up this little tiny baby pig and drove her home. And she has been part of our family. She's like our third dog. She hangs out in the house. She has her own crate in the house. She hangs out with our dogs and our cat. And now we have 5 baby chicks. Like, she's got all that, but she's really cute and has got her own little fun personality. So never expected it, but it's really fun.
I'll take your word for that. All right. So you talked about the camaraderie that comes with your Wildman experience. So how do you're in the civilian space, the guys you're helping are, I suppose, are mostly in the civilian space. How do we get the men to be willing to seek your guidance, not try to just DIY their life? There's a lot of regret, a lot of undone things. How do we, shows like this will help them get aware, but how do we get men willing to receive coaching, receive mentorship, because they have that.
This is a question I get pretty often. And I have to, again, just be straightforward and be like, you're not going to get men to do anything. Men need to find the value in that themselves. And I know this from my own experience. And so I hope that when women or partners pass my information to men take a look at my background and like, oh, I can give this guy a little bit of respect for what he's done.
Kind of like when your wife, when she was a girlfriend, handed you something. Yeah, a lot of us women are the ones that go nudge, nudge, nudge.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us an example, Johnny, of a case, a before and after that you've worked with.
Oh man, one of my favorite clients I worked with, he came to me, had just gone through a divorce. They had a daughter, and he was trying to be this different man. He had been married for, I think, 12 or 13 years at that time. So he came to me and he's like, hey man, we go through the process. We find out, okay, he wants to be independent and he wants to be confident in who he is as a man. And at the time, there was a girl that he had started to kind of see. It was a friend of his. He started to see her, but then like they had an interaction that was very much, he was very codependent and latched on, which pushed her away. So the connection didn't blossom into a relationship like he had hoped. And like she had hoped as well. It was kind of like a letdown for both of them. So they remained friends after, and he started working with me. And so I said, listen, dude, you're not dating anybody. For the whole time we're working together, we're not dating anybody. We're going to focus strictly on you. So from that point, we worked every week on, focusing on him, focusing on his joy, his love for himself, his confidence. I gave him a lot of tools, a lot of homework to do, a lot of challenges to do. We started to gain independence. We started to gain confidence. And what happened was towards the end of our time working together, he had an interaction with this same woman. Well, first off, I'll back up 1 second. People started to, in his life, be like, hey, you look really different. Like you're behaving differently. Like this is a very different version of you that we saw 3 months ago. Like, what's going on in your life? And he goes, nothing. I'm just picking myself first right now. So he didn't expand on that. And he started to hear a lot of appreciation for the man he was showing up as from friends who knew nothing about what he was doing with me. Fast forward, we get towards the end of us working together, and he had an interaction with this woman, and she was like wanting to have a relationship with him. She wanted to go date with him and wanted to like start to make this connection again. And I was like, hey man, like you need to listen to yourself and see if you feel confident in doing that right now, or do you still feel like you need to have this connection with who you are to still work on it? So we had a real conversation about it and we dove into it, and he came to the conclusion that he did not want to date still right now. And this woman was the one starting to send the text messages, starting to provoke the connection to have a relationship. And in all of that, he ended up gaining confidence in himself, saying that, oh, I am a man that can be desired. I am a man who's independent and confident. And when I have that independence and confidence, the things, especially the relationship that I'm looking for in my life, starts to come to my front door. I don't have to be needy. I don't have to be codependent. I don't have to sit there and be like, oh, but I want this so bad. It showed up. I need to take it right now. He's like, no, that's not where I'm at right now. I still want to work on myself. So I'm not going to approach this as us having a relationship. I'm going to let her know I just want to remain friends right now. And in the future, if it comes out that he's ready for a relationship and she's still available and the timing is divine in the sense of it's meant to be, then it'll happen. But right then he wasn't. And the most important thing was who he became in that time frame of us working together, which was a man who believed in himself. And he didn't need anybody else to confirm that.
Wow. So is there anything else that you think you'd like to share that I didn't ask you?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that the one thing with men is men need to come to their own decision to start doing this work on themselves and be honest about where they're really at in life as far as their happiness. Because right now, majority of them aren't happy. It's not a conversation they have. And so I challenge any man listening to sit with yourself and ask yourself, when's the last time you gave to you without any expectations from other people or society? When's the last time you looked at yourself and said, am I actually happy aside from anybody else in my life? Is who I am today making me happy? Are the way I speak and the actions I have today, do those make me happy? And have that real conversation with yourself. And when you come up with the answers, if it is, I need to actually start doing something more for me, then look to books, look to podcasts, look to coaches. Don't be scared to get external support in that journey, because those are tools that you can leverage to improve your life. And for women out there, don't feel helpless. You can help men, and you can help men by giving them some grace and just understanding we all have a lot of struggles as men and we're taught not to speak about them. And also to give that support in maybe handing them a book, and don't be deterred by him being like, I'm not going to read that. Let him sit with it, because just like me, after a few months, guess what I did? I picked up that book, you know?
There are lots of women who take on projects. The man becomes a project. They really want to change him, but as you said, the man, you can't make him do anything. So
you're not here to fix him,
but we can't make him.
Right. You're not here to fix him. You're here to be an example. And all you can do is hand him the books or listen to the podcasts in front of him that maybe have self-development tools that are very healthy, or shows like this where people are developing. Maybe listen to that in front of him, because he's going to hear that as a byproduct and he's going to listen. But give him the opportunity to do this on his own, because that's where the real change will happen. If you try to force something, he's going to be resentful and it's never going to stick. So don't feel helpless when you try to help and he doesn't take it right away. He will take it in his own time. Just allow him that process.
There you have it, guys. Johnny Elssasser, the Wildman Experience, the elite community, his signature Art of Masculinity podcast. You can catch him regularly there. And don't forget the book, Design the Man Within. I'm going to give you Johnny's Linktree. Johnny, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you, Trudy.